All right, Coach John Clark, Sacred Heart. Here we are in the office, Sacred Heart University. Today's a big day. It's graduation day on campus, but also a big day for you. You graduated, master's degree, right? What was your degree in?
Yeah, it was in sports communication and media. I went back to school. I'm 41 years old. During the pandemic, I made a decision to go back to school. And after 2 years, just completed my degree this morning. And then this afternoon, the undergraduates completed theirs as well. So we all had a little celebration to commemorate, a great day.
So it begs the question, and there's only 24 hours in a day. How in the world do you run a program, commute 2 hours a day, one way, right?
Yeah.
So it's 4 hours total. You live in Providence. You get here, you run a program, you're keeping on top of your wrestlers, and you also have to study and get good grades yourself to be an example to these guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was especially last year. Fortunately, this year with the women's coach, Paulina Biega, did an amazing job this year and ran the program. But last year, I was the women's coach, the men's coach, going to grad school, and the president of the EIWA as well. In addition to that, we were doing a partnership with Team Impact as well. So we were very busy and still are. But I always say, if you want something done, you give it to a busy person.
So you still have a club team though, too, right?
I don't do the club anymore.
Okay.
Obviously, still being well connected, but there is potential to do that again. But as of right now, just solely focus on the team.
All right. So obviously we talked about lack of time or the time that you find a motivated person. What does it take to get a small Division I program now, having a women's program that you mentioned with Paulina? There's only 4 Division I women's programs now. Coming from a small school like this, and I keep saying the word small, but it just doesn't strike me that you would have enough time or energy to put into this program. What's motivating you to keep going every day? And then let's segue into the women's program right after that.
Sure, yeah. So the way I approach it is just like the way this school's approached it. So in 1963, this school made a transition from being a high school to college, and now they have over 10,000 students. And so basically they built it, and it's no different than a true successful business, where basically from the ground up there were 167 students to start, and now, like I said, over 10,000. In addition to that, there's almost 1,300 student athletes, of which 2 sports come from both men and women wrestling. And so we're the Sacred Heart Pioneers, and we try to be pioneers, and certainly growing things, but also providing opportunities.
So I'm a big champion of growing women's wrestling, and obviously getting more Division I programs on the map. Recently, Iowa is making a big splash as being, one of the Power 5 schools, the first Power 5 school in order to do that. What do you guys see that you need to do in order to keep growing that side of the program, but also just women's wrestling in general? How do you play a part in that?
Yeah, so I've talked to 56, as of last week, of the different men's coaches across the country on how to basically get the women's program. With that being said, Paulina is very capable. She's an awesome coach, and she's really growing her roster and doing everything the right way. I'm just here to facilitate more on the men's side if they have questions. But other than that, she's awesome. She does an amazing job, and I'm just here to support and encourage whatever she needs.
What kind of support are you getting from the administration on both programs and moving this whole program forward?
Yeah, and that's basically what it is. It's support. I mean, they are being more aware and loving wrestling, no different than my wife, who knew nothing about wrestling, now loves it and can't wait for the next match. And our administrators and our senior administration beyond athletics is very excited about wrestling, and they're here to provide a lot of opportunities for us. And I think it's a point to note is that we were adding women's wrestling during the pandemic when a lot of schools were dropping it. And so we are more about providing opportunities. And certainly in the sport of wrestling, with the biggest roster in the country of 70 people, we're showing how popular this great sport is and how many people will come if given the opportunity.
So I got to make sure that I heard that right. 7, 17, or 70? What's the number that you have
Yeah,
on your roster? 70 on your
yes,
roster.
7-0, and when I started here, July 24th of 2017, we started with 16 student athletes on the team, and over time, it's really grown, and it's just been nice to see people end up matriculating here and finding a home here where they might not otherwise if they hadn't visit. My biggest thing is getting people on campus, and if we can do that, we got a good shot as anyone to land them because of this great school and because basically everything's new. I mean, it's only from 1963 on, and even beyond that, we're one of the fastest growing schools in the country. And so people like the location, people like how modern everything is, and in the end, it just checks so many boxes that they can't say no to it.
Yeah, so I come from Big Ten country, the Ohio State University. We'll chat about that in a minute. But I didn't know anything about Sacred Heart. Of course, I know, being a wrestling fan, that it's one of the 77 programs that there is out there. But coming from this Big Ten mentality, it's like, who can these guys be? You rattled off a couple of really cool things that I think maybe we should dive into a little bit more. What brings a student athlete to Sacred Heart if it's not even on their radar? What kind of amenities, what kind of offerings do you have for that student athlete?
Sure, and we know that, and we know that a lot of people haven't heard of it. Predominantly, it was just most people from the Northeast. Now we're getting recruits from Georgia, California, Texas, and both on the men's and women's side. And so it's just like anything else. You got to let them know about it, and why not? I mean, I grew up in upstate New York and traveled 9 hours away for school, and so it's just a matter of letting people know what's out there. And I just only expect from each person that prospective student athlete that I'm talking to is that they visit. And if they decide to go elsewhere, I'm at peace with it. But like I said before, many times if they just visit, this is their number one choice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful campus. I mean, I'm impressed myself. I mean, it's got a lot of character, but it does kind of have a shiny newness to it.
Sure.
It's nice. So if we move on from there and get into a little bit more about the program, let's talk about some of the goals that you have, some of the challenges that you've seen come through the program, and then where we're heading moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the unique part of where we're at currently as a program, at least on the men's side, is that my first year we started out, we were 2-10. The following year we were 5-7. The year after that we were 8-6. The year after that we had 2 national qualifiers for the first time in 14 years. And after our win against American this year, which was a big win for our program, it was kind of a tough year. And but that's wrestling, right? We have a lot of great wins, a lot of great progress sometimes, and then there's setbacks. And so the mantra and the belief around this program is get back to where we were. In addition to that, we want to surpass even where we were when we went 8-6. And so it's really, there's a lot of goals that we have for the program that we feel like that we can accomplish because everything is set up. As the school is growing in numbers and stature and ability to support us, we really feel fortunate that we can they know what my goals are and they want to help me get there.
Talk to me a little bit about the academic side of things here. What is the student athlete going to get as far as the student side goes?
Sure, yeah. Fortunately, not just for here, but really anywhere across the country. I mean, there's providing tutors for every class. Obviously, with a bigger team, there's ability to help each other, study with each other, tutor each other, take classes together, which is a really big advantage. In addition to that, it's still a relatively small school where you can go and talk to your professors and just really get to build a relationship with them with smaller class sizes. And then also, I tell them that when with the school growing in popularity and size, the longer you're here and the longer that you're, after you graduate, your degrees become more valuable over time. There's been a lot of schools that have been around a lot longer, and it is kind of the degree what it is based off the national perception. With Sacred Heart, it's being molded right now, and it has been basically since it started. Mm-hmm. We've been fighting from the start, and we've been fighting in a way that has shown tremendous growth, and a lot of our competitive schools are not, whether it be wrestling or not, are not understanding how it's able to be done. So the great thing is, it's never been a better place for us. We're in the wonderful hands of Judy Enricchio, and she's our athletic director, and she's worked her way up among the administration here, and she loves wrestling and she supports it, and we're just so thankful that we have people that understand wrestling and that want us to win.
So I oftentimes try to hit a little bit smaller programs. That's like the third or fourth time I've said the word small now. I want to get across the opportunity that wrestlers could have here at Sacred Heart that maybe they couldn't have if they sat behind somebody else at a Big Ten school like maybe Ohio State. Where you got to kind of pay your dues, or you got to, number 1 or number 2 or number 3 ranked guy in your weight class. Is that a valid, is that a valid issue that you would bring up with a wrestler to come here and wrestle for you?
I think the thing that I would talk about most with a wrestler is let him know that our expectation is to beat those teams ahead of us. And if you're willing and able to have trust in us and give our school a chance, you have the ability to cement your legacy. No different than what NC State's doing, what Akron was doing at Missouri. And so those are always going to be forever legends, Kwazowski and, just so many of the champions of NC State, the Jack family, which ironically enough are from Danbury, 45 minutes away from here. But they're going to be legends there at those programs because they brought it to new heights. And so when we're talking to kids here, I encourage them, look at the results, right? Every coach is going to say they're up and coming. But look at the results and understand who we are, but also understand that we want to be those better schools. And so it's not so much, we're not really taking a different approach than any other school. We're just allowing people to see where we are currently and be totally truthful about that, because we don't ever want to talk someone into coming to school here. We haven't had someone in the transfer portal in over 2 years because we hopefully are giving them a good experience, but also during the recruiting process, we're being very upfront and honest with them. And we're not, obviously we want everyone to come to school here, but we want them to know what they're signing up for even before they do get here.
So you mentioned recruiting outside of New England. Obviously this would be, more of a hotbed. Talk to that kid that's out in California or down in Texas or in Florida or even in Ohio.
Yep.
Talk to that recruit and try to get through to them in a quick elevator speech on what they're going to get underneath you as a coach.
Yeah, and it's a big leap of faith. We have a kid on our team from Ohio, mutual friend of our family, and he basically didn't know what he was signing up for, right? We were in a dead period last year, but he trusted me and he trusted my family, and he just won most outstanding freshman and hardest worker this year. And so it's something that there's an element of trust when you're going that far away from home, but there's also an element of really looking into what we have to offer. And I really encourage each and every wrestler across the country to truly understand the academic side of things, as well as talking to the student athletes on the team about their experience. Because if it doesn't matter if you're getting recruited by a coach and they tell you everything that you want to hear, you want to actually, and I tell the kids this, and maybe it's why we have 70 people on our team, because last year we started with, or 2 years ago with 48, this past year, or a year ago with 40, and we stayed with 48, stayed with 40, and our retention is through the roof. And so when I tell these recruits, talk to the kids on the team, ask them what their experience is. They are very well familiar, and they also understand now that we're growing beyond the New England Northeast region, if you will. And as I talked about before, we got wrestlers from all over the country, 9 different states this year, which normally, before this year, New York, New Jersey, New England, and that was it for many years.
Mm-hmm. You're EIWA?
Yeah.
Is that right? So the conference is there, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be competing against the best. You're going to be going up against the best. So there's no reason why. And again, I go back to what I say, the opportunity just can be so big for someone if they can just look, even an elite wrestler coming out of high school, if they just look past that Big Ten perspective, there's so much opportunity for kids and girls even at Sacred Heart, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, we wrestled Penn State last year. This year, we're starting our first three matches are Lehigh, Army West Point, and Iowa. And then we go to UPenn for the Keystone Classic, and then we go to Vegas to wrestle in the second toughest tournament besides. I mean, people might argue that with Scuffle and Midlands and stuff, but up there anyway for the second toughest tournament
Right.
behind going to nationals, right? I mean, it's a very tough tournament. So, we want to have a great schedule. We want to show people that we can. I mean, just naturally in the IWA and the 17 schools that offer wrestling there are really doing a good job, and I say that because I'm learning the inner workings as the president now of each of the programs, and I'm evaluating and seeing what these schools are doing, and I have to say I'm quite impressed with the work ethic, but also the knowledge and the expertise that these coaches have. And so when kids from high school are realizing they can get a great education and wrestle within the IWA, it's a huge advantage that they can get. It's not just wrestling focused. And so that's just been something, obviously, I'm very familiar with the IWA, but when you're in a leadership role, you really get to know, every in and out about it.
Switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about being a Buckeye. You went to Ohio State, obviously All-American twice while you were with Ohio State. Is there anything that you remember that you learned as a Buckeye wrestler that you still institute today as a coach?
I almost wore my Ohio State ring today because I'm a big believer of using your experience of the past to help you in the present. And I know, obviously, Dan Gable's not thinking about his Iowa State days when he's coaching at Iowa, and the same. But I'm also gonna take from that backpack of experiences that I had there to really help me. And because a lot, like you were saying before, well, it's not the Big Ten. But if it's not the Big Ten, do you have a coach that wrestled in the Big Ten? Yes. And a brother who won a national title.
Right.
And so it becomes a situation that, again, checks off so many boxes. And I'm fortunate. I mean, at the time, it was between Texas and Ohio State as far as the biggest school in the country. And here I grew up in a very small town in northern New York. And to have the experience of going to the biggest or second biggest school in the country was awesome. And you certainly learn a lot. And you realize, though, basically, you have to, if you truly analyze the time that I was at Ohio State, before we started, the team was trying to get better, and then we finished third in the country our senior year. I think a lot of people think of Ohio State and what they see under Tom Ryan's tutelage right now, but a lot of times they weren't finishing and winning team trophies before.
Right.
And so we had to have a big buy-in from Tommy Rowland, Blake Kaplan, Jeff Rattler, J.D. Bergman, and all the other great teammates that I had. But those were a lot of people in our class that really, Jesse Lang. I mean, ironic enough, now they own Rudis, Tommy and Jesse do. And so, it's no surprise that so many of my former teammates and whether it's being successful in the corporate world or continue to train. I mean, JD and Tommy had great international careers as well. I carry all those experiences with me and use them really every day.
It brings a certain, honor, maybe that's a word, to this program, just right off the bat. I mean, you come from a wrestling family. You mentioned your brother, obviously, your dad, your other brother, and so you've got wrestling in your blood.
Yeah,
you really do. So that kind of experience, I'm sure, helps translate into the success that you're seeing here, right?
It does. I mean, my dad won a national championship as a coach, coached, I think, 9 national championships himself. He won a team title in 1988, and then throughout the 24 years of coaching, he had 9 national champs and like 46 All-Americans or something like that. My older brother, Mitch, was national champ in high school and an NCAA champ as well. And then my younger brother won a national prep title, but unfortunately on September 21st of last year passed away. But there's many things that I've learned from each and every one of them. And so yes, it is a wrestling family, but it's a wrestling family not just with brothers, but also with a parent that has. You see, we were 5 years apart from each other at Ohio State, and so I know, it was a 15-year stretch where at least one Clark brother was at Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's so much knowledge, not only from my brothers but from our friends and teammates in the great Buckeye State, right? And they're family to me, and
Mm-hmm.
they always will be. And so it's not just learning from family, but it's also learning from the family of the great state of Ohio.
Yeah. What's next for the program? What are you doing in this off season? What do you got going on right now?
Yeah. So one of the things that we want to focus in on is the ability to have people buy in during the off season, if you will. And I think everyone works hard during the season. Everyone has practice every day, but a lot of success can happen. What are you doing in the off season? That gets a little tricky because we're not able to run anything officially. But if you get buy-in from the student athletes on the team during these next 3 months here are really pivotal. What I call it the 100 days. The next 100 days are really pivotal on the success that any team's going to have. And it's not just in wrestling, really in any sport. And the more teams that can bond together and continue to keep their goals in mind through these 100 days. I know it's a cliche, but it's kind of easy to wrap your head around, especially as a student athlete who, the summer is a funny thing. You can treat it in a lot of different ways. But if you really get after it and then have that spill over into the fall training and into the season, that's where when we went 8-6, there was a tremendous buy-in. And again, we're talking about wrestling here, but you can substitute any sport in there.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about social life here on campus, even in the off season, right? So what
Sure.
are the kids doing right now? What kind of fun can they have?
Yep.
What do we do here on campus and in the surrounding area to have a good time?
Sure. Up until last year, all 70 kids lived within a 3-hour radius, which is rather remarkable, right? Especially I mentioned before, I traveled 9 hours to go to school. But as far as location, I mean, we're 15 minutes away from the beach. Or, depending on how you get to New York, it can be an hour and 15 minutes. Hop on a train, it's sometimes quicker.
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey's close. Newport, Rhode Island, the Cape,
Mm-hmm.
Martha's Vineyard, going up to Boston, the 3 northern states, and spilling into upstate New York. I mean, it's really nice to be able to have the ability to go hiking, go to the beach how many schools are 15 minutes from the beach?
Right.
How many schools have access to these big time cities?
Mm-hmm.
You want to go in the finance world or really medical, like everything is right here.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds salesy and I don't want it to come across like that, but how it would more, I say that because it's obvious, but it's like maybe not talked about enough. Like you can go anywhere in 3 hours. We can get to Philly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even say that before, but we can get to Philly within 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's really nice to be able to have all this at your disposal. I was more talking professionally, but as far as things to do,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's plenty of. Basically, I look at it. This is where people come in the summer to vacation.
Mm-hmm.
This surrounding area, this New England area, it's nice to have this really basically in our backyard. So if kids decide to stay here and train over the summer, they have the ability to be surrounded by all these great things, and they'll quite frankly never run out of things to do. Which, depending on what school you go to, and I'm not going to single out any other schools, but some of them are not totally around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying anything more than that, people run out of things to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And here, that's not the case. Again, it might sound a little salesy there, but it's just the truth.
Yeah. 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 Obviously, Columbus, Ohio doesn't have mountains.
Well,
we got a lake, but it's even a man-made lake. It's nowhere near the beach. So,
yeah.
Even some of these other Big Ten schools
Sure.
in the middle of a cornfield kind of thing.
Sure.
So there's plenty to do out here, isn't there?
Yeah, and people like that, especially when they have some downtime, and it's more of a conversation when the kids get older too. And they go and they take weekend trips and whatnot. And so it's nice. I mean, one of the other things too, we encourage all of our student athletes. We talked about graduation before, but if they're staying here and they're getting ahead with their classwork during the summer, we encourage all of our student athletes to get their master's degree. And 75% of our student athletes on our team get their master's right now. That can change. It could go up. It could go down. Maybe I'm so passionate about that because you could redshirt a year and do 4 years with this additional COVID year. We've had kids. I mean, Joe Acoust, he did 5 years, no redshirting. Luckiest ever, right? Like that's never happened before.
Wow.
But today I see him graduate and maybe I'm going to make fun of myself here a little bit, and they don't need to do it as they're approaching 42 years old. Right. I mean, I guess I'm being an example for them to get it. But more than that, I mean, obviously every coach wishes they did everything perfect. Looking in hindsight, I would have got my master's a long time ago. I graduated college 18 years ago. I would have done it then. But the reality is every coach isn't perfect. And there's some things that, as long as you can be honest with your kids, here's some shortcomings that, that I've done. And I want you guys to be better for it. It's never fun to have that conversation. But if you can't be real with people, because sometimes I actually feel like when I'm coaching, I've said this in the last 6 months, probably more than I have before, is that sometimes I feel as if I'm too, I don't want to say not myself, but just too regimented in the way without sharing the struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kids have need to hear the struggles, especially the last 2 years with everything going on, because sometimes, some people, oh, well, that's just this person. They don't understand the things that I have to deal with. And whether it's mental health or anything else, it's okay to share with people that, hey, listen, I didn't get my master's before. Now I'm going to do it. I didn't win nationals. My brother did. Here's some ways that maybe I could have done a little bit better. And I think kids really appreciate that.
And then the sport of wrestling is all about that struggle, that grind, that adversity. And I always say that some of the best kids, the best wrestlers, still don't win that title. There's only one that does. And so the second, the third, the fifth, the All-American, even though the qualifier all the way down, they experience loss.
Yeah.
So it's a sport of loss. More loss than wins, really,
Yes.
if you look at it that way. And so these kids need to be taught, from a role model like yourself, I'm sure.
Well, it helps. I mean, a lot of them, yes, they're fairly close, but a lot of them are away from home. And even some that are close, it's not always something that they know how to be great at. And what I mean by that, I used to ask my older brother all the time, how'd you know that you could win nationals? Or how'd you, even in high school, yes, my dad won a national, but I think that some people are, like you're saying, it's so close between the margin of success here that if you can just show them you're not that far off, right? And they're like, wow, I appreciate that. And so whether I can serve as someone that has been close to being at the top, but also known a lot of people that have been there, that's basically my coaching philosophy too. I mean, I take so much of what I do and morph it into a coaching philosophy, whether it be technique or way to run a practice. And I think, when I was younger, I just did it basically the way I did it and the way I was, told to do it. Now I take the best of everything that I've seen, whether it be teaching locking your hands on a double. That I never was taught to lock my hands on a double, but Jordan Burrow locks his hands on a double. How are we not, whether talking about head position, talking about whatever it is, we have to put together a style based off all the great media content that is out there. And so we have access to all that. And so even as coaches, right, we have to sort of relearn the ability to positively get the message across. When I was first showing technique, I remember in my coaching, I was doing this great technique, and it was, someone could be filming it like this, and oh my gosh, that is amazing technique, but was the message getting across to the kids? And I learned from coaches and mentors along the way, pay attention to what the kids are doing, not how well you're showing the moves. And that was like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, we're going to be great. I'm showing it awesome like this, but like, maybe the kids aren't picking that up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not sharing enough of the struggles where the kids think, oh, well, coach, everything just goes right for it. Well, you know, I've had some setbacks. I mentioned my brother. Like, I've had some setbacks, especially in the recent years. And it's like, I got to share that with them so they can see the difference between being successful and not is razor thin.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got one more question for you. We just went through nationals where there was 5 champs from one school. The year before that, 4 from that same school. Why not SHU?
Well, we end every practice with national champs. Truth be told, I don't know if everyone says it every time that we end practice. But I think the way you pose it is very similar to the way I think. You know, why not? I mean, I will say this. Kale Sanderson right now is at a different level than all of us. I'm just being as real. But beyond that, like, there's ability for all of us to be very close to what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because I used to say, well, if I was to start a program over from scratch and put a tack on a map, I can pick anywhere in the country where it would be as far as like good high school wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Put it right here. I mean, I can get to New Jersey, PA, Long Island, New York. I know it's the same, but like, you know, best in New England. Like, as far as, I mean, you'd like, okay, what I'm leaving out is, you know, Cleveland, California. Like, there's a lot of great wrestling across the country, but as far as like a 3-hour radius, can't beat it.
Right.
So location, you can't have that excuse.
Right.
I mean, maybe you could argue, well, we're a little closer to New Jersey. Okay, we're splitting hairs here. We're maybe less than an hour away from literally the ideal location.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Schedule. We're in the Northeast Conference as a university. The only other school in the Northeast Conference that has wrestling is LIU. Meaning, we can wrestle anyone we want. I mentioned part of our schedule, but the other part of the schedule is I can wrestle anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not forced to wrestle this or that. We can, in theory, have the best schedule in the country if we decide to do that, and there'll be no qualms about it. Now, is that the best approach? You know, we have to find a schedule. You know, I'm just going to crush the kids every match, but you talk about why can't you be? It's not because like we can have the best schedule in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So you start dissecting every little facet. Okay. And you start to realize that the workings are there. And there's some things that can be improved upon, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I wrote a book, I finished in September of 2020, sort of during the pandemic. I started and finished in September. So about 5 months.
Wow.
The book was titled All I Ask For Is Improvement. And so I had this 20-year plan of winning a national title here. I didn't specifically go over that 20-year plan, but there was more of just like the concepts were that to be able to close the gap on all these teams. And quite frankly, minus, you know, I mean, going from 2-10 to 5-7 to 8-6, having 2 national, like, if that continue to improve this year, we're on that pace still.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even like this could be a completely different scenario. You know, let's say we were, you know, 10-4. This could be like, holy cow, they're still on that pace to becoming a team that, you know, again, down the road potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes life happens though, right? And then we won 1-9 this year. And that's tough. Now do you say, well, we're way back here? No, not necessarily. You know, I think that's, you know, we've all had losses and we got to come back and get third. And then once we come back and get third, that kind of completes this year. And then we got to next year is a new opportunity to go in the next tournament to be the champ again. And what I mean champ, I don't want to come across as something that we're not yet, but like a champion in a season and something that we're proud of. So to me, I remember in high school, I used to go to, my grandparents lived in Florida. And so every year I would go there, and it was like an evaluation time. We'd go there for spring break in April. And it was like, did I accomplish my goals this year? Was I happy with my success? And this continued on into my college years, because the year after, or the week after nationals at college was when we had spring break. And the only time that I didn't accomplish my goals, the only time, was my freshman year of high school. In New York, you can wrestle 7th, 8th grade. Freshman year, I didn't. Then sophomore, junior, senior year, and then all 5 years, I accomplished what I was set out for, as far as my goals were. This year, the first 4 years, my goals were accomplished. Everything that was set out for my first 4 years and 1 year, just like in high school, right? And you're not perfect. High school, 1. College, 1. But if that continues on, not that I was the best college or high school wrestler ever, but I was the first New York State champion from my section, Section 10. And then, I'm third all time in Ohio State wins and takedowns and everything. So those are things, again, it's not the best, but it's something that I can be at peace with, I guess. And not that going 8-6 is the best record, or having 2 national qualifiers when you haven't had one in 14 years. That's not what I'm saying is the best, but it's more of a situation where you are still progressing. Again, going back to all I ask for is improvement. So that you can put yourself in a situation to be very successful when you ask a question, pose a question, why not being the national champs?
Yeah, that's awesome, Coach. I appreciate it. Why not? That's so cool. Okay. Anything else you got for us?
I just appreciate you coming here. I'm not going to say, I see a lot of interviews. No, I don't have anything else. And then they go on a tangent. But I just appreciate people that take the time to, why not? Why not go here? If you actually look and call time out and see what's going on here, it's actually pretty remarkable. With 34 sports, men's and women's wrestling, right? Biggest school in the country, best location. I mean, it's really like, it's amazing to tell a story that isn't often told. Right? And that I think is what makes yourself unique, is that you're willing, and you're not the only one that's done that. I think there's a few people that kind of see what's going on here and like, wow, there's so much potential. But the nice thing about it, every wrestler has potential.
It's just that wrestling story.
And that story is being written right now. Right now, that story is being written. It's not something that we can just evaluate year by year. It's always being evaluated. And that's why, like, when I'm trying to grind, and I want to be the hardest worker, out of all the coaches in the entire country. And I'm not saying that to put down any other coaches or anything. It's just more like, if I can control that and my kids can see that and they become the hardest workers, then basically you can be at peace knowing that you accomplished everything that you could. And I didn't wrestle one single match. I didn't enter any tournaments, any events, anything the day I graduated college. And that's coming from someone, I didn't win a national title. So if any, like, maybe my brother could say that and then he didn't wrestle. But it's just basically you're at peace. And that's what I want each and every kid, as we're trying to grow this program, every kid to be at peace with what they did here. And I think that can be really powerful, because then, regret's tough. We all have things that we regret.
Right.
And sometimes we might not have an opportunity to get that back. I mean, I've been talking about getting my master's for 15 years before I did.
Yeah.
Right? And that was something, I was literally like, I'm going to do it, but I never did. That to me is like an athlete who said that they were going to do all this stuff and they never did. And sometimes it's too late, and other times it's not.
Right.
But the message is, and it's a cliche in wrestling all the time, and even in life, right? Lead by example and all this stuff. Well, trying. I tell the kids on my team, it's hard to do the right thing. It's really hard to do the right thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And no one does the right thing all the time. But if I can lead by example and try to do the right things, then maybe they can take that approach. And with 70 people on the team, depending on who you ask, that can be an advantage, disadvantage, or anywhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking to build a house and you have 7 people, or you, in your words, 17 or 70, and they're all well trained, assuming they're all well trained, I'll take 70 people to build a house.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right approach? We don't know. And we're seeing this has never been done before.
Right.
Ever. This is like, there's not a team within 20 people of this.
Right. Right.
And so we'll see as time goes on. But the bottom line is that we want everyone on the same page and take it personally. Because here's kind of the best way to sum everything up. What if it does happen? It's got that like Hoosiers feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the, I don't want to say, like, even though we're close to a lot of cities and all the stuff I talked about location, but we're in like a small town here in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of like say stuff about New England wrestling, which kind of really hurts my feelings. I've lived in Providence, Rhode Island, in New England for in July it'll be 15 years.
Yeah.
That's personal to me. I don't like when people say bad things about New England wrestling. But Connecticut is part of New England. And this story could get really interesting if this small school in Connecticut, which is in New England, that people don't say always the best things about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about tourists or anything like that. I'm talking about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And it works. What a story.
What a story.
And these kids will become legends. And why not?
Why not? Well, listen, I could do another 2 hours with you, but you have to get in a car and go celebrate 2 hours from here, probably with family. Congratulations on getting your master's. Leading by example. Why not? I love that. That's good. And I really appreciate you having me, Coach.
Thank you.